Look, younger years are harder, but I think once you've got some experience under your belt, there's a few ways to persuade clients. But I also think they trust you because they've seen some of your projects. I remember I did a job and the builder was really scared about painting the door green. And it turns out that that is the number one thing that everyone loved on the job. And it's funny because it's just paint and it can be changed and that's probably a really easy way to persuade a client because paint can be changed very easily. It's not an expensive exercise, but it's a lovely way to bring colour in without being too scary. But I think because it was the first thing someone would see.
Front door.
Yeah, the front door.
Okay.
Yeah. And I just said, look, I'll pay for the door to be painted if you don't like it. I was that confident it was the right way to go. We had beautiful olive trees and green spilling down from the level above. And when we painted that door green, I knew everyone loved it because the cars would stop and slow down to have a look at this project. So it's a really nice thing introducing colour to a space.
And it's beautiful that you've just touched on you were confident in it.
Yeah.
And it's up to us to be confident
Yes.
in our own designs.
Yes.
Otherwise, the client's going to be, well, how do I know this is the right choice? So we've got to instill that confidence. Welcome to Behind the Design, a podcast where we unfold the details behind the designs we know and love and explore how each project comes to life. I am Camilla Ingle, owner of Unfolded, an interior design and styling studio. In this podcast series, we dive into the details with our industry experts, covering topics such as the creative process, latest design trends, and how we, as an industry, work together to meet the brief and overcome challenges. Let the conversation begin. Mia, welcome to Behind the Design.
Oh, hi, thanks for having me.
So nice to have you here. And fellow interior designer.
Yes.
So
Design
Sydney-based.
sisters.
Yes, we are. You know, I've always dreamed of having an interior designer on the show because I think it's just so wonderful to chat about your processes, how you do things. And, you know, like we caught up the other day and how different it is to maybe how I do things. Yet we're in the same role.
Yeah, everyone's got different approaches to things and it is nice hearing how people approach things differently.
Yeah, 100%. And so tell me a little bit about, you know, when you started. Obviously, you've had experience overseas with your scholarship.
So it's been a bit of a journey, a nice journey. So studied at the White House Institute of Design and from there I was really lucky. I won a scholarship and I studied in Florence, Italy for a year, which was incredible, absolutely amazing. Then I came back. I got my first job at a company called Egg Studio in Newtown. I had a really tough boss, but she was amazing. She instilled really good work ethic. And then I got my first big job at Bryony Fitzgerald Design, which was incredible, really beautiful high-end houses in Sydney. And I was there for about 6 or 7 years. Then went to Art and Pike, which was absolutely amazing. I actually wish I spent a little bit more time there because they're just an amazing design firm, great branding, great design. And then I went and worked for my father. He's an architect and I started an interior design team within that, and that's where I learnt working with developers, still focusing on residential and designing homes. And I was there for, again, 6 or 7 years, and then I went out on my own, which is where Mia Lake Interiors began officially.
Wow. I don't know where to start with that journey. I'm sort of like Bryony Fitzgerald, amazing. Art and Pike, so inspiring.
Yeah.
They are still absolutely just, you know, when you look at their work, sometimes I'm thinking, how do you know to put all of this together?
Yeah.
And I'm obviously the same role, but I mean, my aesthetic is a little bit more neutral. But what they do is just so beautiful.
Yeah. They are both Bryony and Art and Pike. They play with colour and texture in an amazing way. And it's hard to find the clients that will be that colourful, but I think when people see what colour can do and the feelings it provokes, it's quite a nice thing to live with.
And so do you feel, you know, in that journey, I want to touch on working with family in a moment. But with the colour concept, I find it really interesting because people, you know, do find it hard to see how colour can be mixed together.
Yeah.
So not only the psychology behind colour, but I personally wonder sometimes, how do you articulate to a client, well, these colours are going to work together in this way. Trust me.
Yeah.
And I'll do it for you.
Yeah.
How did you find that process in your sort of younger years?
Look, younger years are harder, but I think once you've got some experience under your belt, there's a few ways to persuade clients. But I also think they trust you because they've seen some of your projects. I remember I did a job and the builder was really scared about painting the door green. And it turns out that that is the number one thing that everyone loved on the job. And it's funny because it's just paint and it can be changed and that's probably a really easy way to persuade a client because paint can be changed very easily. It's not an expensive exercise, but it's a lovely way to bring colour in without being too scary. Green's probably a colour that I try to introduce into homes because it does have that lovely connection with inside and outside, and it exists in most people's homes anyway. When you look out the window, you see green from the trees or the grass. So I try to tell them that, colour already exists. We just want to bring it into the home more.
Oh, I love that. And yeah, it's so interesting. So can I ask why he was nervous? What was the nerves about?
It was so funny because we had quite a few other extreme things in the project, but I think because it was the first thing someone would see.
Front door.
Yeah, the front door.
Okay.
Yeah. And I just said, look, I'll pay for the door to be painted if you don't like it. I was that confident it was the right way to go. We had beautiful olive trees and green spilling down from the level above. And when we painted that door green, I knew everyone loved it because the cars would stop and slow down to have a look at this project. So it's a really nice thing introducing colour to a space.
And it's beautiful that you've just touched on you were confident in it.
Yeah.
And it's up to us to be confident.
Yes.
In our own design.
Yes.
Otherwise, the client's going to be, well, how do I know this is the right choice? So we've got to instill that confidence, don't we?
Yeah, and they've paid us for a service. And look, I always tell clients I'm passionate but not precious, and I'm going to push what I think is appropriate for a project. At the end of the day, it's their house and I want them to be comfortable in it. But if we take green, for example, there's multiple shades of green like this. What I'm wearing today is quite bold, but you can do a sage green, which is quite soft, and it's not as scary for some clients.
And it's introducing those softer hues, but it's still colourful, isn't it?
Colour, yeah. And I think once someone sees it and they get over that first initial fear, then they're a bit more welcoming to having colour of it. Yeah, they get comfortable.
And so, so then later in your journey, prior to Mia Lake Interiors, you worked with your dad, you mentioned.
Yeah.
So go down, if you don't mind sharing behind the scenes.
It's definitely interesting working with family because in a way you become a colleague as opposed to the traditional father-daughter relationship. And I'm going to say it was a wonderful experience. It was really lovely to have something in common with my father and seeing him probably more than I ever did in my life in that period of time that I worked for him. The dynamics are hard when you work with family because I think you're most comfortable with each other. And so sometimes,
putting the professional hat on.
Yeah. And you are used to being the daughter as opposed to an equal. We did it for a long time and we produced some absolutely beautiful work. Like I said, this is where I learned to work with developers, and I think I got a really good understanding of architecture, really, I guess, appreciating what architects bring to a project and being a bit more focused on what the inside and outside mean when they're together. So that was really lovely to be in a space where you could do all of it as a team.
Holistic.
Yeah, very holistic. And, a placement of a window is so important on the outside, but it's equally important on the inside, and getting that balance right of where the priority lies.
Placement and aesthetic. These days, sometimes you can have a window feature. It's not just a window anymore. Yeah, that's so interesting. And so then on to Mia Lake Interiors. So how many years now have you been established?
So February will be 5 years. So 4 or 5 years old. It's been a journey.
I knew.
Yeah, but really, really good experience. It's somewhat begun when I started at my dad's firm. I remember I created the Instagram handle, Mia Lake Interiors. He was Vic Lake Architect, so it kind of sat well together. So when I first started, it didn't feel like a new beginning. It was kind of continuing what I did, but it was on my own.
Like a branch off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I guess you do get used to having a team and system and resources, even a professional printer, and when you go out on your own and you start all the way. I know, but you go all the way back to the beginning, and it's a bit of a challenge to go, I want to stay at that same high level that I've been, servicing and delivering, but you're starting at the bottom again, and you've got to buy computers and a desk, and you then have to create for insurances and all those things. So there was still a bit of a learning curve, even though I felt quite comfortable, starting it.
It's like, and that's so interesting. Like you and I had that chat the other day when we caught up around wearing all the different hats of the business. Yes. Oh my gosh, so many hats.
Yes.
Also, that's a perfect example of us going, well, we're just going to do the interior design. Can someone just set the office up for me? Because, but we need to kind of be across so many things.
So many things. Yeah. And I think the challenging thing is I'm a creative and my brain works one way, but running a business, you really got to tap into that other part of the brain, and it's not natural.
No.
It's not natural for me. And luckily now my team has grown and I've got people in that help me with the things that I don't love doing or I'm not great at doing. But in the beginning, you have to do everything.
100%. And you do need to do everything in the way of getting that business to a point where you can hire.
Yes.
You can scale.
Yes.
And you can be so confident in not only your brand,
yes,
but your business model. Yeah. And like you and I touched on systems and processes.
Oh, systems and processes.
What is it? Evergreen? Is that the word where it's just continually going around? Yeah. Let's just revise that. Let's just revise that. It's like, oh my gosh, I think I'm good. And then a week later, let's add that to the process manual.
And adapt this and change this.
Yeah.
But I think that's just a part of growth.
100%.
Because if you stayed the same, that's not exciting either.
Especially in a creative setting.
Yeah.
We've got to be on top of things.
Yeah.
Like trends and products and finishes and
It's funny, I read somewhere on Instagram, I think it was, about our only job is to be a little bit better than the day before. And I really, really love that because I think you can apply that to life and business. And if you do just keep being just a little bit better each day, in a year, you're going to be much better off than where you were.
And it's also really honing into realistic goals. Sometimes we set these huge goals.
Yes.
And then like added pressure.
Yeah.
Rather than, like you're saying, little bite-sized pieces that can help you go, well, my Tuesday was better than my Monday, so I'm going to sleep really well tonight. And I'm proud of me.
Yeah. And, I think it's about being kind to yourself and, like you said, realistic goals. The design space, it's not a system, whilst we create processes. Design, you've got to allow a little bit of room for creativity and exploring, and sometimes a task might take 10 minutes and sometimes it might take 3 days. But I think if you can be systematic and productive in some parts of, I guess, the process, then it does allow room for that creative time.
Totally. And that's one thing I remember learning when I first started Unfolded, which is similar to you, 5 years in November. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
The reality. But it's exciting. But I remember when I first started, I was listening to podcast after podcast after podcast on that note, just around how to be a business owner. And it was so interesting how a lot of them did say that sort of similar thing where it's like, okay, set up your systems and processes. I'm like, but I'm also designing mood boards, which I need creative flow for. Yeah. And I need sort of that bandwidth to just do what I want to do in the moment.
Yeah.
But I guess the biggest learning for me in scaling the business, and I'd love your opinion and your experience in this, is that as soon as someone does come on board and they start asking questions, how do you do this? Where do I find this? that is a massive prompt to go, well, it's all in my head. I can tell you how I do it.
Yeah.
But maybe we need to set up some more folders.
Yeah.
Maybe just a bit of a plan.
I know. And it's funny, you generally seek, another employee when you're at your busiest and you almost feel like you're too late. And you go, I need help. But that help's never instant. And I've found that it can take 3 to 6 months before that person actually becomes, I shouldn't say beneficial, but where it just starts rolling, where it becomes easier, and I guess you see the benefits without having to put in a lot of hard work. So it's just growing pains.
Totally.
So many growing pains, because it generally will cost you time and money to bring someone on board.
Training too.
Yeah, training, even just another computer, another desk, things like that. It all takes time and money.
It's an investment.
It is. It's an investment, and the wrong person or the wrong decision's not great, but the right person, it just changes things. I love my team. I've got a great team. There's 6 plus me, and I couldn't do it without them. And yeah, they're all keepers. They're all keepers.
That's so nice. And it is so good. Like, you do go through, I remember talking to someone else on the podcast around, you just keep hiring until it's the right fit.
Yeah.
And that can be, time consuming.
And expensive.
And expensive. Yes.
Yes.
But the right fit is so important. Culturally, experience-wise.
Well, it's a relationship.
Yeah.
And you spend a lot of your day with these people. So not only do they have to have the skill that you require, but you need to get along with them.
It's so true. And that's that. I remember hearing in my younger years a lot of cultural fit. And I was like, what does this mean? And now I'm like, I get it.
Yeah.
It's important.
Yeah.
And so tell me a little bit, obviously we bounced it the other day, which I loved. I loved sort of hearing about how you do things. And I kind of walked away thinking, gosh, we're all so different.
Yeah.
Even though on paper it's another interior designer.
Yeah.
So let's unpack a little bit more your creative process. So with your team, delegating, who's the point of contact with the clients? How do you?
So at the start of a project, that's where I probably am solely focused on the first step of the project. So
client facing.
Yeah. I'll meet with the client. I get a really good understanding of what they want. And then we do this stage called floor plan review. And whether it's just a kitchen or it's a whole house, we always do this process. And I sit there with butter paper and my computer and I just massage the design. And that's
Love this butter paper.
Yeah, like butter paper. Rip it, scratch it. I still haven't decided if I like the yellow or the white better.
That's such a designer's problem.
I know. But I think that's where I learn a project and I learn a client, and it's really important for me to do that first step. And I don't think I'll ever pass that on to anybody else in the team. That's always going to be my first step. Once we've got that plan perfect and we've got a direction, that's generally when I'll bring a team member in.
Could I just ask, with that initial process, something that we've found is that also builds trust.
Yes.
Because you're the face. And because it's your name.
Yeah. And nothing goes in or out of the office without my knowledge. I tell people up front, I'm time poor. I cannot respond to every email. I will generally get a team member to do that for me, but they're my words, they're my voice, it's my opinion.
We've had a brief.
Yeah.
How do you find that? How do clients receive that?
Because the team member is generally introduced at the start of the project, they also build a relationship. There are some clients in certain times in a job where they want to speak directly to me, and that's fine. I'll make myself available for people.
It's necessary.
It is. But we're a team. I'm not just Mia Lake. I'm Mia Lake Interiors, and we're a team, and they're a part of the process with me. And they've got design input as well. But I think that initial stage keeps it on brand. I know the project inside and out at that point, and then we develop it further. So after we've done our floor plan review, we then tackle heart of the home, which is generally the kitchen and then the surrounding areas, whatever's important in the project. Then we tackle wet areas. So that's all the bathrooms, laundries, anything that's got plumbing basically. Then we do work, store, play, which might be media rooms, study, wardrobes. And then we move on to attention to detail. And we do it in that order because we've found it lets clients make decision in the right order. We're making those big decisions first and then we tailor it down. In those initial meetings, we worked out where a wall light might be and where we might have handles. And then at that end stage at attention to detail, we can then select all the handles and all the
finishes.
And I guess really considered by that stage.
But a deliberate approach, yeah. And it sounds thorough. I think when you present to a client, not only like we start with the conceptual phase 1 mood board and then into the design documentation and development, but there's so much in between the concept and that second phase that kind of you can't really put into writing. It's like, let's make sure we're clear on the vision too.
Yeah.
And I love that you say you focus on those particular areas because it also works with the construction. The plumbing goes in and makes the builder's job a little bit easier.
Yeah, look, we do sometimes get that phone call of, we're under construction, we need help. And you're like, where are you actually at? As your plumbing setup. And
have you done your reflected ceiling plan?
Look, and you sort of learn what the priorities are for a builder and what they're going to need on site first. And I think with the way that we tailor the project, our process, it is those big decisions first, but it's also the urgent items on site. So we can keep that project moving forward.
While you're working on more of the design of the work play kind of areas. Yeah.
So I think we've developed that process because it's a need and it makes things run smoothly, whatever the circumstances are.
Totally. And so question for you, because I feel like this is something that comes up quite a lot with architects and designers and clients. I feel like this particular call, when the client first calls me, I've got the architectural plans. We have a friend who's the builder.
Mm-hmm.
How do you manage that? Do you sort of go, well, we've only got builders that we work with, or are you open to working with?
I'm definitely open because I think that's how you grow your network. Obviously, if I'm recommending someone, I need to know their skill set and how they deliver, that they're a good person.
Yeah.
Live up to their word.
Yeah.
And that's the same with suppliers. Some clients do come to me and they say, I've got a friend here or someone that owes me a favour, and they've got to take a level of responsibility for that. But if you've got strong documentation, which we pride ourselves on, there shouldn't be room for error or misinterpretation. And if they're a good builder and the client's vetted them, then I'm open to it. I think it's nice to grow your network.
And different builders have different approaches too.
They do.
Yeah, I'm with you. I agree with you. I think I've spoken to interior designers in the past where they're like, no, we've got our entire team. And I think that's why the client always asks in that initial call, because they're used to hearing it's a bit structured.
I do I've got people, I refer to them as the A team, and it's nice working on a project again and again because they understand what you want and they're used to your level of documentation. It's nice working with the same people, but
and you know what you're going to get.
Yeah. But I met those people once, and with a new builder, maybe that's a new relationship and we can work together again.
Yeah, 100%. Can I ask you something more on a personal front? Motherhood and running your own business.
Well, I was stupid. I did it all at once. So my son's 3.5. So when I started my business, running it from home, COVID hit, I got pregnant. But COVID in a weird way was a silver lining for me. It meant that I could be home and be a mother, but I also could keep the business running. The building industry was booming during COVID, which was a huge surprise. I think I lived in a little bit of fear of what was going to happen because my husband's also in the same industry. He's a joiner. And so there was a level of nervousness of we need income if something really bad happens, because no one really knew what this
so much uncertainty
was. Yeah, the lockdowns were a little bit scary.
Yeah.
But it was a juggle, but it was beautiful. I sat on the computer bouncing a baby.
Talking about floor plans.
Oh my gosh, yes. And I think like my brain definitely got rattled, and I really had to train myself to focus on a task, which is really hard when there's a baby crying and all of that. But at the 3-month mark, I sort of realized that I was doing it. I was enjoying work and motherhood. And whilst it was under unusual situations with COVID lockdowns, I was like, I'm going to keep doing this. I think I can do this, and I'll keep doing it for as long as I can. And at a point, we decided to get a nanny in, which helped with, it might be small chores around the house or changing a nappy, but I got to do the important things like feeding and playing with my son.
Bonding.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love the idea of a nanny. I don't have kids myself yet, but when you were saying this, I was thinking it just helps everybody.
Yeah.
As long as it's, as you said, the other day when we spoke about it, as long as they're trusting and you've got a good rapport and reliable and...
Yeah, and look, it takes a village. It really does take a village to raise a child. And I don't live next door to my mum, and my mum's got 2 other grandkids. So I knew I couldn't just go, here, mum, have my child while I do what I want to do. And it also meant that I was really flexible with my days. I could say when I wanted to be around and when I was available and when I wasn't. It's an expensive choice, but it wasn't about the money. It was about knowing that my business would be there after that, I guess, initial stage of young child, a baby. And I was able to grow the business in that time frame because of it.
Yeah, so it supported you to create or continue on with Mia Lake Interiors and building that platform, essentially.
Yeah.
Interesting. And so then the other day when we were chatting around, different types of clients, obviously it's so nice when anyone in any industry can have reliable income. You mentioned developers. How have you found working with developers? Because there's such a stigma. I mean, I've had my own experiences as well. Haven't we all?
Yeah.
But you've had quite a good experience.
I have had a good experience with developers, and look, there are definitely cowboys out there, and there's
Cowboys.
and there's some hideous mass-produced design out there. I think the people that are coming to me are after a certain level and after a certain aesthetic, and you vet them to see if they're good or all the cowboys.
Yes.
And what's lovely about working with a developer is that it's repeat business. So it actually is really smart from a business sense. Projects run quite quickly, so time is money to a developer. So
especially with commercial leases and that type of thing.
Yeah, and it's nice to see a project start and finish quite quickly, because some of my residential projects can go on for years. So that's a really nice aspect. The other great thing about working with a developer is you learn your worth really quickly. So their projects, they buy it at a certain point. You do your design, they spend a certain amount of money, but then they sell it. And, if they make a big profit, you've done your job really well. It's really exciting when our projects break a record. And, I've been to a couple of auctions and I've met some of the owners. I've had owners reach out on Instagram saying they love the property, and it's really nice because I'm still designing someone's home. I just haven't met them yet.
It's not as personal. And you're not needing to spend much time, given that we do invest quite heavily in the client management on a residential project.
Yeah, so we have
different.
2 price points. We've got our developers' price points and our residential price points. Sometimes there's an in the middle because some developers choose to live in their residences as well. But a developer, I don't need to educate them on materials or building processes. They get it, and they're also quite trusting. They're not as emotionally invested, for someone's forever home. So we can be quicker and cheaper for our developers. And I think that's another reason why they like coming to us, because we understand the price point that they want to spend as well.
And therefore you can select the right materials to suit, and it becomes, a bit of a flow-on effect.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so then would that be, how much of your business is with developers now?
I would say it's 50-50. Yeah. So I quite like the mix, because if I had just developers, I don't think I could keep up with the pace. It's really, really fast, and they just want it, want, quick.
And they want answers. They're quite, when they called you, can you get back to me within 6 minutes?
A lot of our developers are builder developers, so they'll be on site, needing information. Where residential projects, like I said before, they can go on for years. So that can be challenging in a sense as well. So it's really nice to have a bit of a mix. Keeps my brain sane.
Totally. And then with your team, have you got everybody across everything, or do you kind of delegate or allocate, I should say, certain team members to certain projects and things like that? Or how do you manage?
So I always will have a lead designer on a project with me. It's great because they're the ones that will learn the client as well as I learn the client. But we're a small firm, so it's all hands on deck when things are required. So we always do weekly meetings and we'll talk about our projects. So everyone will know a little bit about each project that's in the office. We can have anywhere between 20, 30, even 40 jobs running at a time. So we all need to be across, even just to answer a phone call about something. But having a lead designer who knows the project as well as me is really comforting.
So important. And it's also, I don't know if you find this, but I personally find with clients, because you're in the business and on it most of the time, sometimes when you're in it with those clients and you're having those meetings and you're having those conversations, you're taking on so much. You're a sponge to everything.
Yeah.
I find it really helpful. I've now got a wonderful graduate who works for me, and she'll say, oh, but remember when they said, and that's so handy. I'm like, you're right. Or remember in that email, because I'll CC her in on everything. Because, you're across so much.
Yeah. And I find presenting, you are, you're performing in a way. You're trying to get someone to like something that you're proposing.
It's like a sales pitch, a creative one.
It's a creative sales pitch. Yes, it is. It's nice having someone there take the minutes, because that's really important to record all the data from the meeting, and then to sit down after and go, oh, we culled that finish and we introduced this, and make sure we've, written this information down. It's too much for one person, especially if it's a really big house.
And so I remember reading about it, your new service offering, and we sort of dived into it the other day.
Design therapy.
Yeah. I feel like, does it speak?
Yeah,
it's self-explanatory.
It's therapy for anyone that's in the design world, whether you're doing your house or you're a student in the design world. But basically, you book me in, whether it's Zoom or in person.
And it's you, or is it?
Me.
Yeah.
Beautiful. 2 different price points, whether it's Zoom or in person. You've got me for a period, generally 90 minutes, and you can ask me whatever you want. And I'm an open book. I've had people that are students going, what should I do? How do I get in the industry? I've had people starting their own design practices and, really nervous around, how to price a project and the structure of their business. I've had people say, my architect's presented me 2 options and I don't know what to do.
Man. Yes.
I've had a lady go, I found all these options. Can you just tell me which one to pick? So it was like,
I've got 7 rugs.
it was literally like, is it this curtain fabric or this curtain fabric?
Easy.
This bar stool or this bar stool? This wallpaper or this? She loved doing the legwork and all the research, but she really struggled making the decision.
The final decision.
Yeah. So for 90 minutes, I was going, that one, that one, that one, that one. And
is that fun?
Yeah, it is fun.
Because you're then like palming it off a little bit. Like, is that
what it is? It's like giving design advice, but not having to document it. So it's fun. But it came about because I used to get asked a lot of questions, and, whether it be on Instagram or someone would run into you, and, I'm very happy to answer a question, but you've also got to put value on your knowledge and your skill set and your time. And so now, someone comes to me with a question, I go, I've got a design service for this. And, most people are really happy to pay for it. And that was something I had to learn about, not giving away my time or my knowledge for free. Obviously best friends or family.
I know.
You're always going to do that.
Yeah. It's grey.
Yeah.
It's a grey zone.
People then, if they're paying for it, they'll get more out of it and they value it more too.
And I think valuing someone's time, like I know from my perspective, if I ask for I know someone who's busy, they're an expert in their field. I know when I'm sitting in a quiet moment that if I've got to ask them for their time, that I appreciate it.
Yeah.
And so it's sort of just role reversing that, isn't it? That you want someone to feel that way about your time.
Yeah.
Respect your time.
And I do.
And expertise.
Yeah. And I asked myself, I wouldn't go into a doctor's surgery and say, hey, can I just ask you about this sickness for free? I wouldn't go to a lawyer and say, can I get your advice for free? I wouldn't go to Coles and say, can I buy this apple and not pay any money?
Yeah. Or DM Coles.
Yeah.
Are you on sale at the moment?
I'm sure they probably have a robot that answers those
a little
questions.
chatbot.
Yeah. But, you do have to value what you do. And I've got to be respectful for the clients that are actually paying for my service too. So someone's paid a fee and I give them the answers. Why does somebody else get it for free?
Totally. Yeah, it makes so much sense. And it's all those little things that we're discussing that also goes into your systems and processes, doesn't it? Like so many things.
Because you learn to value yourself and your time, and those systems and processes let you do that.
Yeah.
It's even about learning the language. I don't like saying no to people. I'm very much a people pleaser, and I like saying yes. Yeah, and I want to be helpful. It's in my nature. It's very easy to say, hey, I've got a service around this and I'll send you the information. And that's just my line now.
That's so good.
Yeah.
It's interesting with my graduate, I obviously was noticing how much, I shouldn't even say the word obviously, I was noticing how much everything just came naturally for me because I've been in the industry for like 13 years now. Yeah. Emails are natural. How I speak about things, how I ask for samples, quotes on suppliers, etc. And I sort of said, can you do that? And she's just sitting there like, what do I write? At graduate level. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, of course. You wouldn't know how to word that. It's all in my head. So we've created 12 drafts, I think we're up to now, in our info at email, which she manages. And it's just helping her to... that's a system. Yeah. That's a process now.
It does go back to basics.
Yeah.
Simple things that you don't even think about the way you answer the phone. Mm-hmm. Greet the person, say the business. Everything is an experience for a customer or a potential customer, and it's important.
Yeah, it is important. Yeah. And that, I think, is creating that confidence, like we say, that my team is across what I'm across. Yeah. And I think clients really appreciate that when they're investing in us.
Yeah, well,
we're a nice service.
Well, your team's an extension of you. I mean, people generally are coming to you, and you want, if somebody else is answering it, you want it to sound like you.
It's like tone of voice.
Yeah.
Yeah. I remember the first time I got told about tone of voice, and I'm like, is it like my tone? or are we talking about how do we unpack tone of voice? It's hard.
Isn't it?
How do you have a mimic?
Not writing in capitals.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm not shouting. I've just been drafting.
I'm not yelling. I'm on my phone.
My caps lock's on.
And I don't have time to go back and edit it.
I know.
Totally. And I wanted to check in with you on your Make Beautiful, your company, your business ethos. Tell me about that.
Make Beautiful. Well, it came about when I was in Italy. The men
in Italy,
yeah.
Of course.
But the men especially, but everything was bella. And it wasn't just about women. It was about food and their culture, and they paused in the middle of the day to take time out. Yes. And everything to them was just beautiful. And I thought, I really want to bring that into my workplace and my job and what I do. And I realized it wasn't just about making beautiful projects or beautiful spaces. It was the whole journey. It was my day. It was my team's day, our experiences. I've got it written up on my mirror in my dressing room, and I've got it on the wall at work, Make Beautiful, because every step, every touch point of a project, we can make that process beautiful. And hopefully, the end product is beautiful, and the journey that they've been on is equally as beautiful.
That's so nice. And your designs are beautiful.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. Thanks so much. So I have one final question before we close off the conversation. Okay. What is the weirdest or funniest thing that you've ever experienced on a Zoom call?
Oh, it was probably me. I think obviously having a baby, running a business, my baby needed to feed and I had a very important meeting. So I just positioned the camera up here. No, I was breastfeeding my son. But priorities. I was like, I can do this. I can do both. I really, really can do this.
I'm a multitasker.
But that proper took some multitasking and making sure that screen was very much about the head and nothing below.
And so were you just sort of
just holding it?
Everything's fine.
It all went smoothly and they had no idea.
Dulux natural white. That's so funny.
Yeah, oh my gosh.
Well, what an experience.
Yeah.
Okay, so they still to this day probably don't know. And it wouldn't matter because no one would know if it was them.
I'm not going to tell them. And if anyone thought that the screen was very much focused, it was probably them.
She had a weird angle, but funny. Well, thank you so much for coming on, Mia. It's been so amazing.
I loved it.
Where can people connect with you?
We've got a website, mialakinteriors.com. Instagram's always a great place.
Portfolios on there. It's beautiful. Yeah.
Look, I find Instagram's the most, social. I run it, so I'm there.
Yeah, you're behind the DMs.
I'm behind the DMs.
Nice.
You can say hi.
Yeah, it's personal. Yeah. And what's next for Mia Lake Interiors?
Look, we're just going to keep on focusing on what we're doing. I am trying to focus on branding a bit more. I'm really realizing how important it is. I'm also at a point where I'm proud of where we are. I feel like we've done the growth and I really want to show what we're doing now.
Amazing. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of Behind the Design. We've created this podcast to bring people together, inspire new ideas, and foster a deeper understanding of what goes on behind the design. If you found this conversation inspiring, please leave a review as it helps us reach more people. Until next time, keep creating and stay inspired.